Good afternoon. You're watching AB Live, a news-based chat show in which we discuss topics ranging from business, news, politics, and so much more. On today's episode, we will be discussing the salary predictions in KSA and UAE for 2020. And in the studios right now, we have Trevor Murphy from Cooper Fitch. Thank you so much for joining us. So first, Trevor, tell us more about Cooper Fitch. What is it that you guys do?
Cooper Fitch are an executive search recruitment firm. Predominantly, we do a small amount of HR advisory work. We're based in Dubai with a new office opening in Riyadh very shortly. So yeah, that's kind of us.
Great. So recently you did release a report on the salary predictions for KSA and the UAE. Can you give us or tell us more about the key findings from that?
Sure. So for UAE, we see good improvements into next year in terms of activity. So some more jobs being created and stability around existing organisations across the UAE. Unfortunately, we see salaries remaining very flat for next year.
Okay.
In the UAE, I think there's still a slight overhang from 2 years ago with all the mergers and acquisitions that happened. There's still a plentiful supply of high caliber people, and that's keeping salaries a little bit soft from a supply point of view.
All right, just salaries or job opportunities as well?
Job opportunities will be much more reasonable than this year.
Okay.
I think so. Some improvements there.
Right. How about Saudi?
Saudi, so quite significantly different.
Yeah.
This year's been the busiest year in 10 years in Saudi Arabia. From a job creation point of view, salaries are probably going to net out just between 5 and 6% increase in 2019. And we're seeing as a minimum it'll be a plus 3% for Saudi Arabia next year. And activity looks like it's going to increase quite significantly, high single digits or even double digit growth next year in terms of new jobs. And general recruitment activity across the kingdom. But
even across the GCC itself, there's this sort of restructuring happening in so many organizations and firms. There are M&As, and one of the things that we categorize with M&As is job losses.
Sure.
So is that something that we will be seeing more of next year?
Look, I think restructuring, there's been a lot of restructuring in both, across the GCC in the last 24 months. And there are some big ticket items that are still likely to happen still. Banking in Saudi particularly is still in for some mergers and acquisitions in the very near future. I think it's just part of a developed economy. They always happen. I think we see them as quite a negative thing here. I think there is investment coming into the market. So investment in the UAE has topped $10 billion US this year. FDI, foreign direct investment. So that's phenomenally good. Saudi is probably that number would be dwarfed by the number in Saudi. So yes, organizations need to stay efficient, need to look at their market, their products and services that they're supplying, and make sure that they're in the top 20 percentile of their competition. Otherwise, there will be reductions in market, redundancies, and loss of jobs.
We'll talk about competition in just a bit, but before that, another trend that we've been seeing in the last couple of years, I'd say, is the emergence of part-time jobs, especially in this region with the part-time visas being given out. And in Saudi, because of the boom in the entertainment industry and other new sectors, non-oil sectors, a lot of temporary jobs are coming about there as well. So is that something that you also found out in your research?
So I think the UAE's had the contractor model and the freelancing model for a while now. There's been some improvements in legislation on visas, as you've mentioned, in the UAE. That's certainly happening in Saudi. Tourist visa in Saudi only in the last couple of months. It's a phenomenal 180-degree turn for Saudi Arabia to implement that. It has to happen hand in hand with the significant tourism projects. From a job creation point of view, tourism, entertainment sectors go hand in hand with more interim or part-time or short-term jobs. So there's definitely, that's lined up, and we'll see a significant change in the visa setup, I think, in next year in Saudi Arabia and the year after. So that's a growing trend for sure.
But is that a good thing or a bad thing, or is that employment in a disguised fashion?
That's the thing. That's everywhere in the world. We don't have it here because of the visa restrictions. That happens in every developed economy in the world, and UAE and Saudi and Kuwait and Bahrain are highly developed markets. We need to be keeping up. We need to catch up. And it's good that we've made some changes. More changes need to happen. But I think it's just employment.
Right.
Employment is the big pie chart, and that's a less than 10 percentile of the pie chart, and we need to have a temporary, seasonal work and opportunities like that happen and need to happen to have a proper supply of candidates and people into those jobs.
We're definitely seeing more of that ahead of the Expo, but then do you think there's going to be a decline in this trend and fashion after the Expo?
Look, I think the way Expo has been built up, the infrastructure in Expo has been built up, and we need to have a second and a third event to fill that gap that will happen after the event has been completed.
Right.
Absolutely, conversations are happening at a high level at the moment within federal government and within international governments in terms of what that next event could look like. But we have built an amazing infrastructure for future events. Of course, we need to fill it, and then otherwise there will be a decline. That's just a straight supply and demand situation, and I think it's highly likely that there will be another announcement within 12 months of the Expo completing.
Sure, and now coming to the main challenges that you as Cooper Fitch have faced or realized and noticed when it comes to the job market.
Yeah.
What would you say was the top challenge?
So the top challenge in UAE is keeping tier one talent. With the growth of what's happening in Saudi Arabia. So if you look at what Saudi are doing at the moment, giga projects, mega projects, entertainment, culture, heritage, those projects have been very successfully delivered over a decade in the UAE. So that talent that's now required in Saudi is available in the UAE. So holding on to those people, those really good people, whether it's on designer build or on running large entertainment or whatever the project is, holding on to that talent is going to be a challenge.
Right.
Because organizations that we're working with in the kingdom are specifically highlighting key projects that have been delivered across the UAE and said, they're the kind of people that we want.
Right.
That's a massive challenge for the UAE. In certain sectors, it's not going to affect everybody. But I guess there's supporting structures around that. So all the supporting functions like HR and finance and accounting and strategy, etc. Again, they want people that have that experience of building and maintaining and delivering successful entertainment and giga projects like that.
So where are we losing this talent to? So if retaining is a challenge, are they leaving the country?
So a lot of them are going to Saudi Arabia for a start.
Right.
I think that's been the noticeable trend in the last 6 months. But I think we've got such a huge population of expats in the UAE that, if 10% of the expat population decide to return home on any given year, that's a significant population of people.
Yeah.
So lots of people say, so I know loads of people that are returning back home, and is this the beginning of the end? It's not. It's the cycle every year, every summer or every end of year, people decide for family reasons or otherwise to go back. But I think it's incumbent on the UAE to create new jobs and new sectors to make sure that the people that are leaving are being replaced by others, because we depend on tier one talent coming in to continue the successes of the UAE.
There's also a lack of job security among the people here. It's a sense and it's a feeling that people get right now. So could that be one of the problems?
Look, when you've had to say, let's take banking for example, you've had the big mergers in the UAE of banks. I think people, it dents their confidence as individuals. We have not seen that more people are losing or leaving jobs this year than any other year for the last 10 years.
Right.
It's pretty much the same trend, but when you see something that's very visual, like a bank merging and a big bank no longer being there as a name, the sense is that things are changing. Well, things needed to change. There's too many banks.
Right.
We need to be more efficient, more practical, and the federal government are making really the right initiatives and the right moves to make sure that every sector is efficient and every sector is being effective and using the right amount of licenses for whatever service it is, banking or otherwise.
But with regards to people leaving the job market and just giving up their position as employees, could also be because they are just increasingly setting up their own businesses, getting involved in startups, etc. So is that one trend that you see here in the UAE, KSA, Bahrain, Oman, etc.?
So I don't. So it's a trend in the UAE. It's probably not a significant trend as people think as well. People normally start something when it's an up market. We're seeing a flat market in the UAE, and that means there's less people looking at taking the risk of doing something.
Right.
Saudi's different. Saudi's very buoyant.
With regards to startups?
Or startups, particularly tech startups.
Okay.
There's lots of funding available. There's lots of encouragement for locals to set up new tech, look at tech that's been developed across other regions and develop that across Saudi Arabia. There's a massive tech drive at the moment. There's always been a really big tech hub in the UAE, but I don't see as many people looking at doing startups this year as there were maybe 2 years ago or the previous 2 years to that.
Because you're less confident now?
Look, it's like less confident. There's still a big gap in the market in terms of how organizations finance startups.
Yeah.
Banks here aren't friendly. They're very risk adverse.
Yeah.
They probably weren't always risk adverse, but they probably are more comfortable giving higher risk personal loans than giving a startup SME a loan to set up a business.
For sure, we actually did a debate on the very same topic, if banks are really supporting SMEs in the region. Surprisingly, not a lot of people felt they are. But again, speaking of the gap that you just mentioned, so one gap that we've explored in the past is the demand-supply parity that's there with regards to the skill sets being offered in the market and what is being required and what is the demand for. That is one, of course, where education probably has an important role to play. Another gap, though, which is coming directly from the job market after asking people, we found out, is a particular skill set that the market need is being offered, but not for the same salary expectation. So is that a problem that is going to be addressed in 2020?
So the question is, are people coming in with the right skills but not being offered the right salary level?
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of talk about this. I genuinely have. I think at the entry level, intermediate level, and up to mid level, I think there's probably a strong argument that people have been brought in and they are not being offered maybe the same level of salary that maybe historically people would have been. I think at the mid to senior end, which is aerospace, that's probably less likely to happen. The organizations that we partner with certainly hire some of the best talent globally. And if Dubai, Abu Dhabi and UAE or Riyadh or Jeddah want to take the best talent in the market, they have to offer the very best that they can. I think if we look at 5 or 10 years ago coming to Dubai, people thought it was kind of a slightly frontier market. It's very entrepreneurial. And people expected a 25% hike or a 50% hike on what they were getting in their home country to come out here. That's no longer the case. But that's not this year's trend or last year's trend. That's a 5-year gradual removal of that.
But with more competition, that trend should change, right?
Look, we have a gift in the UAE, and the gift is tax-free. And the gift of not working in Dublin for me or London or wherever else in the world people come from is they pay tax.
Yeah.
So if you want to come and earn tax-free money, why should Dubai pay you more than London pays you? Your cost of living is the same. In fact, the cost of living in Dubai is probably below London and most European cities now. So why should Dubai pay you more for what you're doing, the same job? You get 365 days, maybe 360 days of sunshine.
Yeah.
Summers are harsher, winters are magnificent from a weather point of view. Why should a country pay more?
Right, so is this nationality divide also reflected in the salaries here? So you did mention that the standard of living in London and the cost of living is a particular standard. It might be different in the Asian countries, it'll be different in the other Middle Eastern countries. So do you see that nationality-wise divide here with regards to salaries being given out for the same role?
We do not. Again, there's been a significant, this is an ongoing discussion. The organizations that we work will pay parity for salaries across the people that we hire for them. I will say, because I think there would be a big spike I don't think that's the case in terms of responses to that, but for me, again, maybe it's just the organizations that we work with, but they are looking for tier one talent. For instance, we're working with an organization at the moment, and we've hired 15 or 20 associates for an organization. 5 of them have been from India, 2 or 3 from the UK, a couple across the Swiss region across Europe, and everyone, bar none, are being offered exactly the same band as it should be. An organisation that's not doing that is an organisation that should be looked at.
Right, great. So I think I'm going to ask this question to our viewers as well. Do you think there is a parity when it comes to nationality-wise salary divide? Let's see what comments we get. Of course, it's different.
I'm sure there might be a barrage of comments saying that that's not the case. But honestly, for me, an organisation should look at itself and look at what they're doing in the region and the money that they make and what they represent in their product and brand. And if they're discriminating against nationality, they should look at themselves and say, we shouldn't be doing that.
That's obviously wrong. Great.
Yeah.
Now coming back to the report and the findings from the report, there was also a sector-wise divide in it. I just briefly went through it. So there are certain sectors that are expected to pay more and more job opportunities are available. Yep. Can you tell us more about that?
Of course, and that's a natural thing in any market. So for the UAE, we see salaries being flat, maybe a small incremental increase, 1 or 2%, but predominantly flat. Within the UAE, we see some old favourites like strategy, management consulting still doing well, maybe getting salary increases 4 or 5%.
Okay.
We see advisory, investment management, parts of the manufacturing sectors gaining and sales and marketing gaining anything between 2 and 3% increases, which is still, for a developed market like this, is still quite good.
Right.
We see areas like accounting and finance in the UAE and some back office function having a salary drop next year.
Okay.
So, as you would expect in any market as developed as the UAE, we see those kind of differences.
Why is that? Why is the drop happening?
Oversupply of good candidates, typically. So too much supply in a given area normally means that organizations can get better value in the market.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. In every market, organizations look for good value. Saudi is very different again, so we see probably on average 3% plus salary increases across the board. We see, again, some areas like strategy and consulting and advisory maybe getting 5-6% increases, and then a myriad of organizations getting 3 to 5% increases like sales, marketing again, manufacturing, HR, etc.
And do you see a lean towards the public sector more next year or private sector?
In Saudi or UAE?
Let's start with the UAE first.
So UAE, no, we see probably public sector being pretty flat next year in the UAE.
Okay.
There's some organisations that are doing some very clever things in terms of looking at strategy for at government level, at federal and local government level, in terms of tweaking looking at what we're good at in the UAE, what makes sense. Move away from dependency on oil, but also looking at oil and how you capitalise on the oil revenues that we have. Big drive again from an FDI into the digital technology space, and that's cross sector.
Right. How about in the KSA?
So public sector in Saudi could be different, and it could be very, very different.
Okay.
So Vision 2030 is really driving a big drive to privatisation. So there's a lot of focus on privatisation, but there's a lot of new government entities been set up to cope with that change. So organisations like NCP, National Council for Privatisation, and many other entities that are looking PPP, public-private partnerships, are all driving and looking at what Saudi own as a Saudi PLC own, and what they need to change to make it less dependent on oil and use the revenues to really boost and diversify their economy into a much more developed economy space.
But from a government level, is there more of a push towards the private sector or the public sector in Saudi?
Well, so it's twofold, right? So the public sector are driving to ensure that they're efficient across public sector, and they're driving the private sector to pick up on jobs, and they're creating new entities that are allowing for job creation. So Public Investment Fund, amongst Ministry of Economy and Planning, Ministry of Finance are developing a very broad range of activities and initiatives to really drive private sector recruitment. But to do that, you need to have the right folks in public sector, so a private sector mentality into public sector to drive private sector growth and improvement. So that's kind of, again, that's a phenomenon across all developed markets globally as well.
But the natural inclination would, especially in this region, would be towards the public sector, given the benefits are better, the pay is better, and the hours are much more better. So
no, pay is not better. Benefits are better sometimes. Hours are better. Look, I always think, irrespective of where we are in the world, I always think that you've got private sector employees with a private sector mentality, and then you got public sector employees with a public sector mentality.
Right.
So I think there's a reasonable linear population in the UAE. I think there's too many public sector employees in Saudi Arabia. That's not me. That's a noted fact. And they're looking to reduce the wage bill for the public sector.
Right.
Make it more efficient, reduce the wage bill, make it more efficient, and create private sector jobs. So you can't just reduce public sector. It needs to be a stage-by-stage effect. And I think they're doing a very good job on that.
Great. I don't think any conversation right now is complete without the mention of digitization, especially emerging technologies. Yeah. So in the last decade, we've seen this move towards e-recruitment, different portals, social media, LinkedIn, for example, all of that. Do we see a growing trend in that and a massive growth rather in 2020?
Sure. So, job portals are very important, particularly below mid-level recruitment. LinkedIn is a super tool and a very important tool. And for candidates looking for a job, having a really good LinkedIn profile is very important, because whether it's a recruitment firm or an organisation that are looking for people, the go-to tool is probably LinkedIn at the moment. But LinkedIn as an entity is so vast that it's a piece in the puzzle in terms of recruiting for staff. Yeah. And again, you need to be on it to be found, to be considered. But ultimately, it's a tool that's essential. But it's only one step in the process in terms of recruiting great people. But
a lot of agencies are relying on automation and AI, for that matter, to recruit people. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, so we've developed our own technology in using artificial intelligence to speed up the transfer from big data down to long lists. So when we look at any given search, we might look at 500 candidates. And we need to, so historically we would have manually gone through those 500 candidates to select 20 that are a 90% and above match for the particular job we're working on. So with the development of AI, there are really good opportunities to reduce the time to do that. So that's, I think, for recruitment firms, I think AI is a massive step. For those who haven't taken it, unfortunately, people will be left behind.
Right. But is human involvement still necessary in that?
Absolutely crucial. So that's even a long list of 20 or 50 candidates is just data.
Right.
So qualifying those people, speaking to them, understanding their motivations, what their cultural preferences are fit-wise, and what the organisation's cultural fits requirements are, matching those it's the crucial step. People told me 10 years ago that recruitment firms would go out of business in 10 years. Yeah. We've grown by 147% in 3 years.
Oh, okay.
We are busier than ever before because the need for the human touch is invaluable. If you look at any of the banking artificial intelligence software tools that they use in terms of when you call in and you're looking to speak to somebody, I mean, I don't know what I get heart palpitations when I hear an artificial intelligence piece of software answering my calls, because the only thing I want to do is speak to a human being that will answer the questions I have. Yeah. They don't work. They're unreliable. We've discussed them ourselves before in terms of where the gaps are. Yeah. People we all as people want to deal with a person, and that will never be replaced by artificial intelligence.
Hopefully. We've started seeing it in McDonald's already with those automated machines that take our orders, which was really sad for me. I want that human interaction, but then with this entire drive towards automation and AI and VR.
Look, I think like ultimately an interface to order your quarter-pounder meal, it's still being made by, there's 60 people behind that organization, so it's speeding up a process.
Mm-hmm. But it's about the interaction, right?
It is, and I feel my heart palpitating again when I press in my order onto those machines, because it's not always right. And what are you going to say? Well, that's not what I asked for. Well, that's what the machine said. So, look, you need to, organizations, all of them, whether it's McDonald's or Cooper Fitch or Arabian Business News or anybody else, needs to look at tech, needs to understand what parts work for them. Yeah. But if any organization just goes pure tech, what's going to happen? They'll lose their customers, people are going to go elsewhere, because robots have not answered any solutions yet. They fit into a process and they make things a bit more efficient, but that's it.
Right. All right, great. Thank you for those valuable insights. Unfortunately, we're running short on time, but we should have one more follow-up conversation next year to see if these predictions have come true.
Great.
Thank you for watching AB Live. We will be back again next Tuesday.